Water just might be the next game changer of our time.
It's more important that we manage the water resources wisely, make it more of a public policy priority. There are a number of misconceptions. It's, quote, more expensive than the other alternatives, making sure that the infrastructure can sustain the next generation of storms. There are cross-border, transnational disputes. There's really a geopolitical fight going on. $100 million plus for innovations. She led to the patent for the seawater reverse osmosis membrane. The idea was to bring together Arabs and Israelis in a peaceful way to work in science and technology together, solving a common problem, using water, which is this precious natural resource, but also trying to use it as a vehicle for peace and for understanding and for the common good.
Water just might be the next game changer of our time, not just environmentally, but economically, geographically, and strategically. Countries, companies, and leaders understand that water infrastructure are going to shape the next decade. Today's guest has worked for the U.S. government, led major water initiatives in Muscat, Oman, and now serves as a consultant and board member advising companies across water and infrastructure space. He's also the host of the Salty Water podcast, where he interviews global leaders shaping the future of desalination, reuse, and water security. Eric Jankel holds degrees that include an MPA at the Harvard Kennedy School and brings a rare perspective that blends public policy, global project execution, and long-term infrastructure strategy. Today, we're turning the mics around and diving in, yes, it's a water pun, into what he sees coming next. Eric, welcome to Game Changers.
Thank you, Jess. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
It's a pleasure. I've been enjoying your podcast. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I want to jump right in. What do you think the biggest misconception people have about water, or we could get more specific, desalination and industry reuse?
Well, there are a number of misconceptions, but I would say the biggest one is that it's, quote, more expensive than the other alternatives. And if you really look at it and dive into what it costs to build a surface water reservoir today with all the pipelines and all the land, and if you look at how much it costs to build a new well field and all the treatment plants and the pipelines, desalination is actually can be a more cost-effective alternative. Of course, it has to be a coastal situation where you have access to the seawater. But by and large, I'd say most people think of it as a very expensive solution, and it really isn't that much more expensive.
You're talking about reuse.
Desalination specifically.
Desalination specifically.
Reuse is a little less expensive than desalination. And I'd say in the United States, it's been adopted more broadly, especially in Florida, Texas, and California, which are large, water scarce states. And it's used primarily for golf course irrigation, for public parks, sometimes for agriculture. Very little of it is actually used for direct potable reuse, where the reuse water ends up back in the reservoir with the freshwater system. But that is technologically capable. In Singapore, they do it quite comprehensively and quite successfully.
And something I learned from your podcast when it comes to reuse is we should probably be doing more of it, and that there's some pushback because it could be religious reasons, or maybe, I guess you tell me, people think like, it sounds gross, but it seems like it should be a bigger part of the whole equation.
Yes, and I think we learned that especially in the industrial setting, the cost effectiveness of industrial water reuse is very, very high because such a high percentage of water is used in industry for manufacturing processes and so on. And so there's a big advantage that could be gained just without even having to go to potable reuse for human consumption, just to have industrial reuse for industrial water to be treated and reused in the process would be a big advantage in the United States.
Excellent point. And it's probably a fitting start to start by asking you, do you think we take water for granted, Eric?
I do. I think we open the tap. We've been conditioned, since the Industrial Revolution to be able to open the tap and water comes out and it goes down the drain and it goes someplace and we don't think about where it goes. but there are huge costs involved in both bringing it, to the tap in a potable fashion, and then being able to successfully and environmentally safely to treat it and discharge it again. And it's not foremost in people's minds. I mean, it's in the pipes under the ground. It's not like a highway or an airport where you see the infrastructure. So there are lots of reasons why we don't really take it for the value it for what it really does. And of course, we can't live without water. We couldn't survive without water to drink and stay hydrated. We couldn't survive without water to wash our clothes and wash our dishes and use in food. And so, it's really a primary source of human health, and we shouldn't take it for granted. For sure.
Yeah, the cornerstone of civilization. And I feel like in times when, say, we've had a hurricane and we've lost electricity, we need to not have it for just a couple of days to realize how important any of these things are to our lives.
Correct. And of course, we're seeing with climate change more drought cycles and more flood cycles. The frequency and the severity of these storms are increasing, both scales. And so it's more important that we manage the water resources wisely and that we make it more of a public policy priority to do it correctly and put the funds into making sure that the infrastructure can sustain the next generation of storms and so on.
So, having listened and seen many of your podcast episodes, how will water be a game changer in the future?
I think in the geopolitical context, there are quite a number of spots around the world where there are cross-border transnational water disputes. The Tigris and the Euphrates River between Turkey and Iraq is one example. The Nile River Basin with current conflicts between Ethiopia and Egypt, in India, Pakistan, fighting over the Indus River. So there's really a geopolitical natural resources fight going on for control of these resources, for these large countries with massive populations that are relying on the water for agriculture.
And, when we talk about taking water for granted, I include myself in that, like you were just saying, just opening the faucet up and I was thinking more as a child, just letting it run and run while you're brushing your teeth and being maybe a little bit more aware right now. And after meeting you and really hearing all of the stories from these CEOs, from people who are involved at all different levels, talking about what's happening, I just feel a little bit more connected. And there's something big coming up, which is an XPRIZE related to water and water innovation. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, the government of Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Zayed Water Initiative, has partnered with the XPRIZE, which has been around for 20 years or so, to offer up $100 million plus for innovations around desalination technology. Of course, the Gulf states, including the UAE and Abu Dhabi, rely almost exclusively on desalinated water for their human consumption and for their economies. And so the idea is that they'll select some finalists who will try to push forward the technology, come up with innovations that will reduce the cost of desalinating seawater. It's quite exciting. I think it'll take a couple more years to get all the way to the end and have the prize awarded, but it's ongoing now, and it's an exciting development in the industry.
How far does desalination go back, the technology?
Yeah, interesting. There's a new book by my colleague Emilio Gabrielli. It goes back 7,500 years. Aristotle talked about desalination. The Etruscans, the ancient Greeks, the ancient Chinese used somewhat primitive evaporation techniques. But, even Leonardo da Vinci and John F. Kennedy were also concerned about desalinating seawater. Leonardo da Vinci had an invention. John Kennedy sponsored a massive $1 billion plus program in those days to advance desalination technology, which actually led to the patent for the seawater reverse osmosis membrane that's used as the standard technology today for desalinating seawater. So it has a long, productive history, including spanning all of mankind. And really, it's an example of how mankind has adapted to his environment and been on the quest for fresh water for human consumption.
Right. And we're at this, and it's interesting too, because we want to jump all the way to the modern times of AI. And what does AI need? All these data centers. What are all these data centers need? water to keep things cool.
Correct.
And it's just connected to everything. And the idea of this X Prize, I mean, what I learned in some of your episodes is we might be up against the next big innovation. You talk about how far desalination goes back and how important it is now. But people are working on something that might change everything.
Yeah, I think there are developments in the membranes themselves. People are talking about salt-specific membranes that will be more efficient in removing and recovering specific salts. People are talking about combining it with new energy sources like cold fusion. I think there's a lot of room as deep sea desalination is one of the hot topics in the industry today. So stand by and we may see some, generational cost improvements in bringing down the cost of desalination even further than it is today.
It's interesting stuff. Also interesting, let's talk a little bit about you for a moment. How did you end up in this career in the water sector? And what part are you most proud of?
Well, I got involved really through city planning and then large scale project management on the government side. First part of my career was in the government, which took me into water policy and water project implementation, things like the Central Arizona Project, which brings Colorado River water to Phoenix and Tucson when I worked for the government. I would say probably starting up the Middle East Desalination Research Center in Muscat about 25 years ago. The idea was to bring together Arabs and Israelis in a peaceful way to work in science and technology together, solving a common problem, which both for Israel and the Arab countries is reducing the cost of desalination. Unfortunately, the peace process floundered. So I didn't stay with the Middle East Desalination Research Center, but it's still there and it's doing good work to train Arabs and Palestinians in water resource management. So I think that was probably where you feel like you're really making a contribution. Not only is it using water, which is this precious natural resource, but also trying to use it as a vehicle for peace and for understanding and for the common good.
Yeah, one of your guests said, when we started doing this 30 or so years ago, we really felt like we were changing the world, and it wasn't the space race, but we really were changing the world. And that's an interesting theme that I think I heard with a number of your guests.
Yeah, I think most people want to be contributing to something that's bigger than themselves, and they feel aspirational, and they feel that their time and their effort and their energy is going into something which has a broader meaning, than just at the end of the day, improving the balance sheet or turning a profit. Those things are important too. But if you're contributing to society in a positive way, I think it's a good feeling that you have working in this industry.
Let me ask you this. I talked about things that I picked up being a complete outsider watching and listening to your podcast. What have you learned from some of these leaders and CEOs?
I think I'm really impressed with their dedication. And as we were just talking about, there is a sense of, again, doing something that's bigger than yourself when you work in this industry, whether it's chemistry or whether it's membrane science, whether it's construction, engineering, design, finance, whatever part of the industry you're engaged in, you're contributing to something that makes life better for people at the end of the day. And I've been impressed with the CEOs because that's a common theme that comes through. In everything that they talk about, they come back to that point that they're doing something for society at large.
Well, when we pick a career, we hope that is what we're able to do to make the world a better place, make things better for people. Now, if your life, as we kind of wrap some of this up, if your life had taken a different path, what do you think, if you weren't doing this, what do you think you might have been doing?
I'd be a commercial airline pilot.
Really? Is that what you thought you'd be when you were a kid?
Yeah, when I was, 12, 13 years old, I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy, be a fighter pilot. And at some point, along that journey, you saw during the Vietnam War, sights of planes going down with white smoke coming out of the back. And I never had an epiphany, but I think, over time there was something, so maybe that's not such a good idea. And of course, my student capabilities were not such that I was ever going to go to the Air Force Academy anyway, but I am a private pilot. I fly planes for fun. But I think if things had been a little different earlier on, I would probably become a commercial pilot. I don't know what I'd be doing today, but that probably would have been my career path. I love aviation, everything about it.
I love it. I was going to ask if you ever actually took the lessons, were able to do it, and you made that happen as well. Eric, thank you for joining me today, and thank you for being today's game changer.
You bet. Thank you.